October 7th, 2023 was supposed to be a day of celebration for the Jewish people and for the citizens of the State of Israel. It's the time when disciples of the Jewish faith conclude the reading of their holy book, the Torah, and they immediately turn the page towards the story of Genesis, the story of creation. But on that same day, Hamas terrorists decided to launch a massacre, not of creation, but of destruction upon the people of Israel. On that day, Hamas terrorists massacred 1,200 innocent Israelis. They raped Israeli women, they murdered Israeli children, and they took 250 Israelis into captivity inside the Gaza Strip to be held as hostages. As a consequence of that, Israel today is in the midst of a war for its very existence, fighting against enemies on 7 fronts, fighting to return and retrieve our hostages, fighting to give our citizens safety in their land. Out of that war have come stories of incredible sacrifice and heroism. In this program, I'm going to show you the stories of the injured soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces, of the police officers who bravely fought off the onslaught of Hamas. I'm going to show you the stories of the survivors of the kibbutzim that were massacred on that dreadful day.
And I would be happy to one day sit down and have this argument with them.
I'm Benjamin Anthony, CEO of the Miriam Institute, and this is Israel Outside In, the October 7 Chronicles. If you're enjoying this series, please be sure to go ahead and subscribe to the show, to write a comment, to leave a review, and to share this content with anyone and everyone that you know. It really does help us to reach an ever wider audience, and I thank you in advance of your partnership in that endeavor. Hello everybody, I'm here to film the second part of my interview with Amir Tibon right here at Mishmar Ha'emek, a kibbutz in the north of Israel. You'll remember that during the first part of that interview, we learned about the story that shot Amir Tibon and his father, Major General Reserve Nahal Tibon, to prominence throughout the international community. On October the 7th, in the course of that horrific, massive terror attack launched by Hamas into southern Israel, Amir Tibon was at home in Nahal Oz, a kibbutz in the south of Israel. He was awakened together with his wife Miri and their 2 young daughters to the sounds of rocket fire and gunfire. He informed his father of what was taking place and alerted his father to the possibility that terrorists might even have been inside his home. October the 7th was the first time since the founding of the State of Israel that terrorists had set foot inside a kibbutz in Israel's southern enclave. Now, hearing the potential plight of his son and the imminent danger in which he was found, Nahal Tibon and his wife Galia leapt into their car, drove down from Tel Aviv toward Nahal Oz, rescued numerous civilians and soldiers on the way, and ultimately arrived at the home of Amir Tibon and rescued him and his young family. But that's not the end of the story, because after that, Israel bore witness to incredible acts of community throughout this country, one of which was that kibbutzim in other areas of the country adopted the family members of those kibbutzim that were most harshly and profoundly hit and damaged and nearly destroyed during the events of October 7th. It's for that reason that I'm here on this kibbutz, as I mentioned, Mishmar Ha'emek, in northern Israel, because it's to here that Amir Tibon and his young family, along with other members of the kibbutz of Nahal Oz, were moved and have been living since October the 7th. So I'm here to talk to him about his experience as a young father, as a leading member of Israel's media, and as an individual who wants yet to return to his home in Nahal Oz, And he's going to talk to me about what it's been like living here in Kibbutz Mishmar Ha'emek and his ambitions, hopes, and dare I say, prayers for the future and the security of the State of Israel, the people of Israel, and of course, his own family. So Amir, thank you very, very much. You kindly brought us into your home in Nahal Oz, the home that you and Miri and your family were building there that was attacked so brutally on October the 7th. And you told us the story about the rescue that was undertaken by your father who drove down there. Not only did he save you and your family, but he also saved several soldiers, several civilians together with your mother. And after the attack on October the 7th, there was an incredible story that took place, which was that kibbutzim that were removed or are removed from the area that was attacked actually received, absorbed, adopted members of the kibbutzim that were hardest hit. And so we've come here to where you've been since October the 7th, I believe,
Yes.
more or less.
Yes.
Since October the 7th, and we're here on Kibbutz Mishmar Ha'emek in northern Israel. Tell us a bit about your journey into this kibbutz and your experience living here.
Benjamin, it's good to see you again, first of all. And welcome to my temporary home, I can say, to Kibbutz Mishmar Ha'emek. This is a kibbutz that has existed for more than 100 years. It was built long before the State of Israel. It's home to more than 1,000 people, usually. It's in northern Israel, but not very north, not close to the border with Lebanon, where we have dozens of other kibbutzim that have been evacuated, but it's more near Haifa. And for several years, even before October 7, this kibbutz had basically offered our community, Nahal Oz, a place of refuge at times of war. Whenever there was some kind of a conflict between Israel and Gaza, and we had to leave our homes for several days because of the bombardments, we knew that we could come here. And each family would receive a small room here. They have a boarding school on the premises of this kibbutz, Mishmar Ha'emek, and they would send the teenagers back home and give the rooms to families from Nahal Oz. But this time, of course, it's different, because this time we did not come here for several weeks. And it was apparent already on Saturday, October 7, that this is a different kind of event. And they began preparing to absorb us here for a significant period of time. And so when the first bus of families from Nahal Oz arrived here, on the morning of October 8, very early in the morning, each family that got off the bus received already a room that had been cleaned and prepared for them, with mattresses on the floor, blankets, clean sheets, pillows, towels, clothes. People didn't have clothes with them. We all came from home. Shoes. People ran from their bedrooms to their safe rooms and then were evacuated at night without shoes on their feet. And Mishmar Ha'emek had to prepare everything. And they cooked a warm breakfast in their dining hall. This is still a different kind of kibbutz here, a socialist kibbutz like in the old days, and they have a communal dining hall. So they prepared warm breakfast for the families from Nahal Oz. And the people from Mishmar Ha'emek who met us here later told me they felt like they were seeing ghosts emerge off the bus.
Because of the shock, because of the absolute suffering of the people who had to leave Nahal Oz. I want to ask you a question, though, about the process you just described. You said that this kibbutz, Mishmar Ha'emek, was used to taking in times of need, residents of Nahal Oz.
Indeed.
Now, I want to repeat, although we did touch on that in the previous segment of this episode, that's not something that's known, I don't think. I can tell you that I did not know that it was almost de rigueur for people from Nahal Oz to move out of Nahal Oz and suddenly up to...
So I'll explain the situation here. And this is one of the interesting stories of the kibbutz movement at large.
Yes.
After the war of 2014, what we call protective edge, during which kibbutzim like Nahal Oz were bombarded for more than 2 months, the kibbutz movement, the national leadership, decided that it was important to prepare for the next war. And one of the things they did, they made pairings between kibbutzim on the Gaza border and kibbutzim located more in central or north central Israel that could absorb them at times of war, so that if and when the next war begins, every impacted community on the border will know where they are going. There will not be a surprise, there will not be a need to scramble and find solutions in the midst of the war, but everybody will know where is the temporary home that is waiting for them. And this is the power of the kibbutz movement that has more than 200 kibbutzim across the country. And so we in Nahal Oz had known for several years that Kibbutz Mishmar Ha'emek is our temporary home away from home at times of war. But what happened this time is different for 2 reasons. Actually 3, I will say. First of all, the amount of time we would be required to spend here is different. In previous wars, our community was bombarded, but never before had it been breached this way and terrorists had caused so much damage to homes. The second reason this time was different is because it's not only kibbutzim from the south. As the Hamas attack began, the kibbutzim along the Lebanese border in the
Right.
north realized they also have to evacuate
Right.
because they were afraid Hezbollah was about to do the same. And so dozens of kibbutzim on that border also left and had to be settled somewhere. And the third reason, and this is why I'm so proud to be part of the kibbutz movement, kibbutzim opened their doors not just to members of other kibbutzim, but also to thousands of evacuated Israelis from the cities and the towns of the south and the north. And if you go to every kibbutz in this region where we are today, the region, we call it the local council of Megiddo. In every one you will find people evacuated from Kiryat Shmona, which is a town on the Lebanese
Sure.
border, and from Sderot and Ashkelon, and from Shlomi, which is another northern town. And when the state of Israel took a few days to get its act together,
Yeah.
the kibbutz movement was way ahead, already taking care of thousands of evacuated Israelis.
I don't think that story is well known actually at all. I know that the story of those who've been evacuated to hotels is well known. People understand that they're based in hotels all around the country.
Yeah.
But the idea that the kibbutzim anticipated the threat and then responded to the threat in real time in a way that was effective beyond anything that we saw from the Israeli government during that time is quite remarkable. And you said that they saw you stepping off the buses, not you personally, but the folks who had come from Nahal Oz, and
Yeah.
they likened you to images of ghosts almost. What were your feelings as you stepped off the bus?
When we came here to Mishmar Ha'emek for the first time, we really came as refugees. In other wars, we had come temporarily. This time we knew it would take a long time until we could go back home because of what had happened in those homes, because of the communal trauma that we lost so many people, because we knew now a war was starting and Nahal Oz is so close to the border that we would definitely feel the war over there for many, many months. And you saw it, Benjamin, even when we were in my house in Nahal Oz last week, we heard the bombings
Yes.
and the fire
Yeah.
from Gaza.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it differently this time. I said, for an unknown period of time, this place is going to be my home now and the home of my family. We got into a small room. When I say small, it's like, basically between the two of us and some kind of a perimeter around us. We had 4 mattresses waiting for us on the floor. One for me, one for Miri, and one for each of our daughters. Of course, the girls loved it. Pajama party.
Right.
Pajama
Right.
party. Everybody
Right.
sleeping on a mattress on the floor. For Miri and I, it was a little more difficult. I have to say we felt ashamed toward our own daughters that we had brought them into this kind of situation. That these 2 young girls are now sleeping on a mattress on the floor in the same room with their parents. It was difficult. I have to say that Mishmar Ha'emek, as a kibbutz, the way that they took action after action to make us more comfortable, they really helped us rise from that embarrassing moment.
Are you still in that same room to this day?
We moved to a larger room, and we are supposed to move 2 weeks from now. We're now talking in early April. We're supposed to move into caravans. They're bringing 50 caravans here for families with children from Nahal Oz to move into.
And is that facilitated by the government or is that facilitated by the kibbutz
Facilitated by
movement?
Mishmar Ha'emek and
Really?
funded by the government.
Okay.
They basically told the government, let us lead the process, just
Right.
give us the funding.
Right, for
Because
efficiency apart
They
from
are
anything
very
else.
efficient. They
Right.
are very efficient kibbutz.
Okay.
And I want to give you an example to their efficiency.
Yeah.
So the families arrive here on October 8th. And while everything is still in a complete mess, Mishmar Ha'emek asks for volunteers from their own community. And they choose 2 buildings within the community. One of them was an office area. One of them was a room that was used for instructions and guidance and courses and things like that. Within a day, they repurpose these spaces. They build and they move and then they clean and they bring and they take out and bring in. And on October 9, they open it as a kindergarten and a daycare for the children of Nahal Oz with locally recruited staff.
Right. Right. No, it's
Amazing.
incredible. And
Now, people who went to hotels, sadly, for long weeks,
yes.
had no educational institutions for their children.
And it's the exact opposite of the broader story of the government. I think what we've seen since October 7th is the resolute failure of the government in so many civil sectors.
It's endless.
Endless.
Yeah.
And really the Israeli citizenry filling those gaps very, very successfully.
I want to give you a small story that's
Yeah,
help you
please.
understand this. So after they opened the kindergarten and the daycare, at first it only operated for 3 hours because they didn't have enough staff. And then it began 4 and 5, and after a month and a half it was for 6 hours. And then we did get help from one high-level bureaucrat in the education ministry, Orna Simchon. She's the head of the northern area in the education ministry, and she helped us a lot. And after learning that this high-level bureaucrat had helped Nahal Oz and Mishmar Ha'emek, a very senior politician, I don't want to name names, but you can imagine, wanted to come here and cut a ribbon in a kindergarten that's been operating for already a month and a half without his involvement.
Right.
And Mishmar Ha'emek said, no, you did not help us when we needed this help. You are not here. Don't come here now to take credit.
Right.
This is just a small story that gives you an indication of how things worked at the time.
So you're here in Mishmar Ha'emek. How are the kids, how is your family functioning now? There must be endless gaps to plug, but you also need to present a degree of normality to young families.
It's very important for the girls to have a routine. First of all, to have a routine, to have a reality to hold on to. So when the kindergarten here started, we immediately decided to send them. Some parents needed a few more days. You know, the idea of letting go of their kids was difficult after everything that happened, but we decided we're sending them. Miri, my wife, is a social worker. Before the war, she worked in Ashkelon, which is the largest city in our part of the country, and she works with children on the autistic spectrum. So she really does amazing work. And the organization that employs her told her that they also have available jobs in this area. And after a few weeks, she decided she wanted to go back to work. She wanted to help others. It would give her a sense of purpose. And she found a job in Afula, which is the largest city in this part of the country. It's about 25 minutes from here. And now she's working 4 days a week in Afula, helping children, doing what she loves, and I'm very proud of her. And I think it was good for her to go back to work, not to just stay in this limbo of being internally displaced, out of home, out of work. I think it was important for her to do that. I also took 2 weeks off after everything that happened, and then I returned to my work in the newspaper because a war was happening, and I felt like it was irresponsible for me not to do my work at the height of its importance. When do people rely on journalism most? At times of crisis. And I told myself, with all due respect to what happened to me, I cannot sit on the sidelines. And I returned to the newspaper, and I continued working until January 1st, which is when I took a leave of 4 months to write my book. I was given an offer to write a book in English about the events of October 7 and the history of Kibbutz Nahal Oz, and I felt like that was an even more important mission than what I was doing in my daily work, to tell the story to a wide international audience, and that's been the focus of my work in the last few months.
Have you found that process therapeutic, to write that book?
Yes, I have to say that the writing has been my therapy. I also spoke with a psychologist. We did 5 sessions over Zoom, but I felt that writing was really, and researching, not just writing, because writing is at the end of the process. First of all, I had to go and conduct research about everything that happened, and go and speak with soldiers who had fought in our kibbutz, and speak with my neighbors, how they experienced that day, and speak with senior people in the military and in the intelligence to understand from their perspective the failures of that day, and go into the archive of Kibbutz Nahal Oz, which was not hurt on October 7, and look for historical materials about the kibbutz and its relationship with Gaza, which had known many ups and downs over the years. The research process was my therapy, because knowledge is power. And knowing the story and understanding it better, I felt gave me power.
So I want to talk a little bit about this theme of community that you've mentioned. There's an obvious question here. I know that you have a wonderful relationship with your parents. You could have gone and stayed with your parents, for example, presumably. But you chose to come here. Why was that?
If we had gone to my parents, we would have had our own bedroom, and there would be another bedroom for the girls, and we would have privacy, and it would have been easier for me with my job at the newspaper. But we are part of a community here. We are part of a larger family, the family of Kibbutz Nahal Oz. And we chose to come here and live in more difficult conditions, sharing a room with our daughters, not having that privacy, not being able to cook our own meal for half a year now. I haven't cut a salad in half a year because we belong to this community. And we wanted to be with our friends. We felt the community needed us, and we needed the community. It was altruistic, but also egoistic at once.
Right.
Altruistic because we were able to help here with many, many things that happened over those long weeks and months. Through the grieving process, I was able to help the kibbutz in its dealings with the media and telling our story in a way that wouldn't hurt us. Miri is part of the education committee of the community, and she was very involved in a lot of decisions that had to do with the children. But also for us to be surrounded by friends who had gone through what we ourselves went through that day, it made a huge difference. I feel like people who were not there on that day, they can empathize, they can love us, they can hug us, they can support us, they can never fully understand. And a neighbor of mine, who maybe is not my greatest friend even in the world, but was there on that day, we understand each other.
Yes, yeah. So you came here and you decided to be with the community. It's a community of people who've been horrifically attacked, but by no means is it a community of people who are broken. And as you mend, as you repair, there are all sorts of day-to-day occurrences, activities, programs that really need to take place here so that you can return to normality, so that your wife Mary can return to normality, and so that your two daughters can do so. Where have you seen those activities subsidized from? Who's coming in here? Where are you going off the kibbutz? What does day-to-day life now look like?
I think, Benjamin, what we've seen is on the one hand the complete failure of the government, but we've also seen Israeli society at its finest hour. And I cannot even begin to run through the list of everybody who would come here to volunteer, to help, to support. The largest credit goes to the Mishmar Ha'emek community. But I'll give you a small example. In Migdal Ha'emek, which is a town 20 minutes from here, there's a religious community that since Friday, October 13, the first Friday we were here, have been sending us cakes and challah for Shabbat every Friday. 6 months now. Now you can say this is a really small thing, but they've been doing it every Friday. They come here, they bring 20-something cakes and challah for the community. And we had a joint meeting after a few months that this was going on. We organized an evening together. We invited them to the dining hall here, and this time we prepared dinner for them. And I gave a lecture there about the history of Nahal Oz and the nearby religious community that used to exist before Nahal Oz existed, Kibbutz Be'erot Yitzchak. And it was such a fun meeting. And these are communities that come from very different backgrounds, religiously, ideologically, politically, but in that moment we were just together, and it was very beautiful. And again, this is a small example. There was a group of Bedouins from Rahat who used to work in Nahal Oz, in the agriculture. And one of them organized a barbecue for us one evening. He brought 10 friends here from Rahat and from another village here in the north, and they just fed our entire community. And then they went and did the same thing for a smaller group from our community who were evacuated to a kibbutz in the south, Kibbutz Kramim. There's about 10 families who chose to go over there, mostly because of work in the south.
By the way, that kibbutz is where Elisha
Nachon, this
from.
is Elisha's kibbutz.
Right.
Okay. They were not forgotten. He said, we organized for Nahal Oz in Mishmar Ha'emek, now we're organizing for Nahal Oz in Kramim. Again, these are small examples, and you see that it's broad, it's throughout Israeli society.
If you're enjoying this series, I'd like you to please partner with us by subscribing to the show, leaving a comment, leaving a review, and by sharing this content with anyone and everyone that you know. Doing so really does help us to reach an ever wider audience, and I thank you for your collaboration in that endeavor. I want to ask you two questions about life here. The first one, and if you're not comfortable or you want to think about these and you prefer not to answer at this moment, feel free to say so. But I think it is important to ask. You said earlier in our conversation that the people who empathize with you will never quite understand. They can empathize, they can sympathize, they can care, but if they weren't there on that day, they can't quite understand, and that's understandable to anyone who hears you say that. There's another group that doesn't empathize, the international media. There's a lot of criticism here towards what we're doing here in Israel. What would you like those who look on from afar and are very, very ready to condemn? By the way, your colleagues in the international media, your peers.
Not all of them, but some,
yeah. But I'm focusing on those who do this, right? Not those who don't.
Yeah.
What would you want them to understand? What would you say to them? Were you able to communicate? And by the way, you may already have done this. I don't know. Tell us.
Because I did so many interviews in the international media at the beginning of the war, back then it was easier. Back then, all the sympathy of the world was on us. And of course that has changed over the months because of the situation in Gaza. And I'm not belittling at all what happened over there, and I understand the focus on the suffering over there as well. But let's just remember that the Israeli-Gaza border is rife with military targets. There are so many military bases and positions, and the Hamas could have easily decided we're going in and we're going to fight soldiers, we're going to kill and kidnap soldiers. As an Israeli, I would have cried all day, but I would have said this is war. They came into civilian communities, and within those civilian communities they went to homes of families, and when they came to my house, they saw a baby stroller outside the door. You can see it in the video that they took of the attack. They had cameras on their helmets, and I later found one of those videos, propaganda video distributed by Hamas in their media, where you can see my house. And you can see them firing into the house, and the baby stroller is right next to them.
It just says so much about the intentions on that day, and I don't think that that's understood. I don't think people recognize
this
that.
is, I don't even need to preach anyone. I don't even need to answer
Says it
anyone.
all.
Just listen to the story.
Yeah.
They could have gone only to the military bases. They came into the civilian communities. They came to my home. They saw the baby stroller, and they started firing through the window.
Do you feel compelled to tell that story, your story, more and more often, or do you feel a compulsion now to rest?
Well, right now, because I'm writing the book, I'm not doing many interviews right now.
Thank you for doing this one.
This is one of
I
the
really
only
appreciate
interviews
it.
I've done in weeks now,
Yes.
because the book is going to tell the full story. But in the beginning, I felt it was important to tell the story so the world will know. And it's still important today. And this does not cancel the story of the people in Gaza. I understand their story too. I understand the people there who've suffered a lot because of this war. And we can argue who's to blame. I assume most of them will blame Israel. I will blame Hamas. And I would be happy to one day sit down and have this argument with them and talk about this. But sympathizing with their pain and understanding what's happening to them should not come on expense of what happened in Israel on October 7 and also in the days afterward. And this idea of coming into civilian communities and deliberately murdering civilians is something that has to be condemned and has to be remembered.
So I want to ask you another question, and it's again a difficult question, but I referenced a soldier by the name of Elisha. So Elisha is a soldier who is a reservist. He's 44 years of age, he's a father of 6, and he went into the Gaza Strip to fight, and he returned an amputee, a double amputee, in both cases above the knee. And he's a remarkably resilient individual, and he's actually making great progress. But what this makes me think about is a conversation I had with the uncle of a hostage. There's a hostage inside the Gaza Strip right now by the name of Almog Meir Jan, 21-year-old guy. And
Abducted at the party?
He was at the party, and he was filmed in captivity by Hamas. He's there in a video. Our organization has worked several times with his family, and his uncle said that he looks on at the soldiers who are injured and the soldiers who have been killed, and he feels responsible for that. He said he feels responsible for that because he recognizes that these soldiers have gone
To rescue his
rescue Almog, his nephew. And I know it's a difficult question, but I want people to hear from you. What's your feeling as a resident of Nahal Oz? You know that these soldiers have gone in no small part in response to what occurred on your kibbutz that day. What are your feelings as you hear the news?
So let's separate the feelings from the logic. First of all, I'll talk about the logic and then about the feeling. Because emotionally, I agree with this man 100%. But on the logical part, this war is not about Nahal Oz. The war for Nahal Oz was fought on October 7. This war is about the deterrence and through it, the survival of the state of Israel. This is not about Nahal Oz anymore. This is about the question of whether or not Israel's enemies will be afraid of it after what Hamas did on October 7. And it's a question of what price Hamas, not the people of Gaza, not the civilians, what price Hamas will pay, and through that, what other enemies will think about the prospects of attacking Israel. That's the logical side of the question. So on the logical part, I don't feel, or think, that's the right word, that all of it is now resting on my shoulders. But emotionally, of course I agree with this man 100%. Of course I understand that every soldier who went in there remembered the images from October 7 in my community, in the communities next to it. I've heard from soldiers who came back that they heard my personal story and felt that it gave them inspiration, or gave them the power to do things and eventually to risk their lives. So yes, that sense of responsibility on the emotional side, I do feel it on my shoulders. And I can tell myself logically, the answer I just told you a minute ago, that this war is about much larger things than the fate of my kibbutz. But yes, I do. And that's why one of the things that I've been doing since October 8th is to go to families of soldiers who had died during the war. I've done more than 20 visits of this kind. And it's one of the most difficult things to do.
So I feel that there are many people who wanted to assist at the beginning of the war, and were giving funding and were donating and giving all sorts of amenities to Israel. But I think that that's waning now a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah, of course. Time does its thing.
It does, but it's not really time to take our foot off the gas, in my opinion. There was a teaching opportunity that you brought to our attention as an organization. I want you to speak about that opportunity. That was for the community while it's here.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm looking over in the near distance, and there's the slogan of Kibbutz Nahal Oz, and written there it says, Ad hatelem ha'acharon,
Nachon.
which means up to the last row, basically,
Yes.
up to the edge of the field, the very border with Gaza. And that speaks to a real defiance, a real determination, a certainty, a mission, a certainty of purpose and clarity of purpose. And when I see that, Ad hatelem ha'acharon, until the last row, I know that the community is going to reconstitute itself there, and it's going to need help to do so. That's not gone away.
No.
So just take a moment to talk about the teaching initiative that you kindly brought to our attention. Tell us how that's going. People will want to know, and then tell us what else you're going to need there.
The way you set up the question, Benjamin, is brilliant, because there's basically immediate needs that the evacuated communities like Nahal Oz need while they are here or in other parts of the country. And then there is the future of how do we go back home and rebuild. And you guys helped us a lot with a cooperation with Oranim College, which is an educational college that basically...
I think it trains teachers.
Yes, and it's an educational college. They train teachers, and their students have volunteered since October 8th to help the evacuated communities in northern Israel, basically giving extra manpower and support to the children. And you helped us bring those teachers, student volunteers into our classrooms and our kindergartens. And my own daughter benefited from that. And all of the children of Nahal Oz and other evacuated communities have benefited from that. And again, this is a small example.
Yeah.
But for the children who get to meet these student volunteers once, twice a week, it's an entire world. It's another figure now in their lives that's giving them joy and helping them progress and helping them get over the tragedy and feel good about their place in the classroom, in the kindergarten. It means the world to them. But we also have to ask ourselves, what is going to happen when we go back to Nahal Oz and Oranim will be 3 hours away from us?
Right.
What will we have on offer for our children then, when we do go back? What will be the nature of the classroom? What will be the quality of the teachers? These questions will determine the future of Nahal Oz, no less than the questions about Hamas and who will rule Gaza and how many rocket launchers will they still have in their hands. The civilian side of the realities on the border will matter just as much as the security reality. And this is something that I feel the government doesn't understand yet, and it's important for supporters of Israel abroad to get it and to start thinking about it now. How do we plan for the future of these communities on the civilian economic side? Education, healthcare, transportation. This will make just as much of a difference as the security reality.
So I want to be very, very candid with our viewers and with our listeners. Had you not told us about the need for subsidies for these trainee teachers to come here and to teach, we would not have known about it. And I'm somebody, and our organization is an organization that is deeply attached to the whole subject. This is what we've been working on since October the 7th. It took you telling us what was needed for us to rise to that challenge. And by the way, not a particularly massive ask. I just want to temper people's opinions of me and of our organization. It was our privilege to be able to participate, but not a heavy lift. I would like you to take this opportunity to talk about some of the things that the viewers might be able to concretely do when you return to Nahal Oz, if you're comfortable talking about it.
There are two large projects that we're fundraising for today. One of them is a new educational complex that will bring our children from young ages to teenagers under one roof within the kibbutz. It's not a school because they go to a regional school in high school, but there's afternoon activities as well. And then there are, educational schedules for the smaller children. And we want to have it in one complex that will be brand new, beautiful and inviting and secure.
Yeah.
And that our children will feel safe there and feel good and feel that they had come back to Nahal Oz to a better reality than the one that existed before the trauma, because we are never going to be able to go back to the same place we were on October 6th. The Nahal Oz of October 6th does not exist anymore. After 15 people died, 7 were kidnapped, and 2, as we're sitting here today, are still in the hands of Hamas. Dozens of homes were damaged at different levels.
By the way, I saw the sign of those two
Omri and
kidnapped
Tzachi.
as I drove in here.
Yes, they are both fathers of young
Mishmar
children.
Ha'emek, yeah.
That kibbutz doesn't exist anymore. We can either build a better kibbutz or we can slide toward a worse kibbutz. But we will not go back to October 6th just because you don't go back into the same river twice. Our only choice is to build a better place now, a better educational complex. And we also want to bring into the kibbutz a new cultural center for the community to meet and to have events there and draw people from outside, from other communities, from other parts of the country to come and visit, and to bring culture into the kibbutz, to give people a sense of spirit and something that's beyond just the daily chores and rhythms of life. And these are two large projects that we're fundraising for. We're talking about, in the low millions of shekels, but it's very important for us to get there. And anybody who wants to help, feel free to find my contact details online. And it's very easy to find me.
We'll put that up on the show.
It's very easy to find me, and I've been doing a lot of fundraising for the kibbutz. It's something I believe in. And this connection between Nahal Oz and the Jewish diaspora, I believe, is a long-term connection. It's not just about the immediate needs of here and now. It's about building community. And community in today's world can expand beyond the perimeter fence of the kibbutz to every corner of the world if we do the right things.
Amir, any last message that you'd like to give to the viewers?
I want to tell a story, short story that will give the viewers inspiration. And it's connected to what we just discussed. One of the soldiers who died on October 7 trying to reach our kibbutz is a young man called Yiftach Yavetz from Ramat HaSharon. This is one of the wealthiest towns in Israel. His father, Gilad, is a high-tech entrepreneur, a very successful man who built one of the largest energy companies in Israel. And on October 7, it was Gilad's birthday. And on that day, he lost his son, Yiftach, who was trying to reach our kibbutz and died in a battle with terrorists on the road leading to the kibbutz. My father arrived to that same battle a few minutes later, and Yiftach could not be saved at that point. And ever since October 8, Gilad has taken a mission upon himself to help our kibbutz. And his company, it's called Enlight, it's one of the largest solar energy companies in Israel, has adopted Nahal Oz. And he's taking part in the rehabilitation process and in helping us. And I had the opportunity to meet him several times and talk with him about this. And he said an amazing sentence. He said, Yiftach got stopped on the way to Nahal Oz. And I decided to continue the journey. And this is the kind of spirit we need these days. People who want to continue the journey with us.
Thank you very much, Amir. It was wonderful to see you here. I really, really appreciate your time. And I'll see you again soon.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Tune in to the next episode of Israel Outside In, the October Chronicles, where I'll be joined by Zohar, a member of Kibbutz Kfar Aza, a community that was devastated by the Hamas massacre of October 7th. He'll be taking us into the homes of some of the residents who were killed and even taken hostage, and telling us what actually happened on that horrific day. If you're interested in investing in the next generation of Israeli and American leadership for the benefit of both countries and the relationship between the two, then please take the time to learn about and to invest in the Miriam Institute annual Israel Strategy and Policy Tour, or ISAP, as we like to call it.
First off, I never thought I would be in Israel. When I saw that this was an opportunity, I put my name.
We really got to see the entire country in 10 days, experience the culture.
The Jewish culture was really impressive for me.
Try to get people to love each other and not to hate each other.
Really impressed by all of the different types of speakers we were able to hear.
It's for cadets, future and current officers of the United States Armed Forces, including the Army, Navy, Air Force and Marine Corps. The ISAP tour brings the best and the brightest active and incoming officers to Poland for a 3-day tour of the Polish death camps, followed by a 12-day, once-in-a-lifetime tour of the State of Israel that crisscrosses the Jewish state. 100% of the participants will go on to serve in positions of leadership within the military and beyond. The ISAP tour is your way to invest in the leaders of today and tomorrow now.
So happy that I was selected and I was able to come. Thank you so much for the opportunity and everything you guys have done here. It's really awesome.
For the sake of the US-Israel relationship, please visit the website today at www.miriaminstitute.org/ISAP.